All right, welcome back for another deep dive.
Always exciting to be back.
Today we're going deep on something both familiar and kind of mysterious.
Oh. What's that?
Case studies. You sent over some material on them.
Ah, yes. Those are fascinating.
Yeah, so I'm guessing you're either fascinated by them or need to use them.
Maybe a bit of both.
Totally.
Yeah.
And honestly, who isn't intrigued by a good case study, right?
Right.
They pop up everywhere. Business, education, you name it.
Everywhere.
But they have a special place in psychology.
Oh, absolutely. Psychology is classic case study territory.
So get ready for some fascinating examples from that world.
I'm ready.
Think of it this way. If surveys are like taking a wide-angle photo of a crowd,
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
case studies are like zooming in on a few intriguing faces in that crowd.
To hear their stories.
Exactly.
I like that analogy.
By the end of this deep dive, you'll know not just what a case study is,
Good,
but
yeah.
why it matters.
Yes.
And how to spot a truly insightful one.
Love it.
So, what is it about case studies that people often get wrong?
Well, what's often misunderstood is that a case study isn't just some anecdote or a story.
I can see how people might think that.
It's a very systematic way of looking at something complex in its natural habitat, out in the real world where things get messy.
So it's not about simplifying things.
No.
It's about embracing the complexity.
Exactly.
MAPC.
A researcher named Lamneck described case studies as this bridge
A bridge.
between the raw data you collect and the bigger picture you're trying to understand.
I see.
They help us connect the dots.
So like making sense of the mess.
Yes. And finding meaning in those messy details.
Okay, I'm starting to see how these deep dives can get really interesting.
Oh, they absolutely can.
But why should you care about case studies?
Oh, good question.
What's in it for the listener, you know?
I mean, let's say you need a deep understanding of a specific situation
Okay, a specific situation.
or a unique problem. Case studies are your go-to tool. Gotcha. They're not about broad generalizations.
Right.
They're about those granular details that can unlock real insight.
Ah, so it's like with Sigmund Freud.
Freud, a perfect example.
We all know he was all about case studies.
Of course.
But now I'm realizing why.
Exactly.
He was dealing with patients, facing incredibly personal and complex problems.
Right.
He wasn't looking for broad trends.
No.
He was searching for individual solutions.
Precisely. By delving into the intricacies of each person's mind.
I never thought of it that way.
He was zooming in on their unique stories, their motivations, their anxieties.
And using those insights to create personalized therapies.
Precise.
That's a fantastic example. It really brings it home.
Glad to hear it.
So whether you're tackling a business challenge,
Uh-huh.
an education puzzle,
Yes.
or even something in your own life,
Right.
a well-designed case study could be the key to unlocking a solution.
Exactly. And that's one of the things that makes case studies so fascinating.
Oh, and what's that?
They can be applied to so many different fields.
So if we're thinking of case studies as these deep dives,
Okay, deep dives.
are there different depths we can explore?
You're spot on.
Like, are there different types of case studies?
Our source mentions 4 main types,
Oh, I love a good typology.
and each serves a different purpose.
Hit me with them.
First, we have illustrative case studies. These are like your case studies 101.
Case studies 101.
They give you the basics
Okay.
and paint a picture of what something is like.
Okay, so they're like the introductory course.
Yes.
Before you dive into the deeper water.
Exactly.
Love it. What else?
Then you have exploratory case studies,
Exploratory.
which are more like the pilot episode of a TV show.
Oh, okay. I can see that.
They help you figure out the right questions to ask
Ah, like setting the stage.
before you commit to a full-blown study.
So they're all about testing the waters
Yeah,
and seeing if there's a story worth telling.
exactly.
I like it. What's next?
Next up are cumulative case studies.
Cumulative.
Imagine combining multiple seasons of a show
Yeah.
into one epic storyline.
Whoa. Okay.
That's what these do. They bring together insights
Insights.
from multiple cases over time
So like over a long period.
to reveal those deeper patterns and long-term trends.
So it's like binge watching case studies to uncover the bigger narrative.
Exactly.
I love that. Okay,
Yeah.
what's the last type?
And finally, we have the critical instance case study.
Critical instance. Okay.
This is where things get really interesting.
Okay, I'm on the edge of my seat. What makes these so special?
Critical instance case studies are like those mind-blowing episodes that completely change your understanding of a show.
Oh, wow.
It can debunk widely held beliefs
Yeah.
or highlight those truly unique situations that make you rethink everything you thought you knew.
So they're the game changers, the ones
Yeah.
that shake things up and push us to see things in a new light.
Precisely.
That's so cool. Okay, so now we know the different types of case studies.
We do.
The different depths we can explore. But how do we actually do a case study?
Ah, yes, the how-to.
It can't just be about sitting around and swapping stories, right?
There's a real method to the madness.
Okay, spill the tea. What are the steps?
Our source outlines 5 key steps, and they actually use a really relatable example.
Okay, what's the example?
The case of a slow learner. Imagine you're trying to understand why a particular student is struggling in school.
Okay, I'm following you. What's the first step?
Step 1 is all about figuring out what's happening right now. What are the observable facts of the situation?
So, like, what's going on at this very moment?
Exactly. What are the students' grades? What specific subjects are they struggling with? What have their teachers observed?
So it's about getting a clear picture of the present situation.
Yes.
Before we start digging into the past.
Exactly. Then, in step 2, you put on your detective hat
Ooh, I like this.
and you start asking, what events, circumstances, or factors might have led to this situation? You're starting to form hypotheses.
So we're looking for clues, like a trail of breadcrumbs, leading us to the root of the problem.
Exactly. Step 3 is where you get to test those theories.
Okay, testing.
This is where you gather evidence from various sources.
Sources like...
Observations, interviews with the student, parents, teachers, maybe even some academic assessments.
So we're not just relying on one person's perspective.
No.
We're gathering data from multiple sources to build a more complete picture.
Absolutely.
Like piecing together a puzzle.
Exactly.
I love this. Okay, what about step 4?
And then, in step 4, you get to play the role of diagnostician. Just like a doctor, you've got to analyze all that evidence.
All that evidence!
And figure out the most likely cause of the student's difficulties. What interventions or solutions make sense based on what you've learned.
This is so fascinating. It's like we're building a case file for the student.
Yes.
But instead of solving a crime, we're trying to understand their learning journey and help them succeed.
You got it. And finally, step 5 is all about follow-up. Did those interventions work?
Ah, so we check back in.
What was the impact? Case studies aren't about making guesses. They're about seeing what actually happens when you put those solutions into practice.
So it's like closing the loop, making sure our interventions are actually making a difference.
Right. It's about accountability and continuous learning.
This is blowing my mind.
Right.
I never realized case studies were so comprehensive. It's not just about gathering information.
No, it's not.
It's about analyzing it, testing theories, and seeing the real-world impact.
Exactly. And you know what's even cooler? Our source doesn't just stop there.
Oh, there's more.
They also highlight different ways to use case studies once you've conducted them.
Wait, hold on. Different ways to use the results of a case study.
Right. It's not just about the research itself. It's about how you present and analyze the findings to generate even more insights.
This is getting meta.
Right.
Tell me more.
For instance, you could write an in-depth analysis of a single case, really digging into the nuances and complexities. Or you could get a panel of experts together.
Experts on what?
To weigh in on the case and offer different perspectives.
Ooh, that sounds like it could lead to some really interesting discussions.
Absolutely.
What else?
You could also compare and contrast similar cases.
Okay, compare and contrast.
To see what patterns emerge. Or even, and this is where it gets really intense, put someone in the hot seat and cross-examine them about their decisions in a case.
Whoa, that sounds like a scene from a courtroom drama.
It can feel like that.
But I can see how it would force people to really think critically about their actions and the consequences.
Exactly. Imagine a business case study where a CEO is questioned about a major decision.
Okay, CEO, yeah.
That led to either success or failure. That kind of analysis can be incredibly valuable for understanding the dynamics of decision-making.
So it's like we're using these different lenses to examine the case from multiple angles.
Yes.
Sparking debate. And deepening our understanding. This is amazing.
It is, isn't it?
Case studies are like these multifaceted gems that keep revealing new layers of insight the more you examine them. But let's be honest, not everyone is sold on the power of case studies.
That's true.
Some people might say, well, that's just one example. How can we generalize from that?
I've heard that one before.
Yeah, I've heard that critique before. It's like they're saying one swallow doesn't make a summer. Just because something happened in one case doesn't mean it's a universal truth.
You're right, and that's a valid concern. However, it's important to remember that generalizability isn't always the goal of case study research.
Hmm.
Sometimes the goal is to gain a deep understanding of a specific phenomenon or to generate hypotheses for future research.
So it all comes back to the purpose of the research. If you're trying to understand a specific problem in depth, a case study can be incredibly valuable, even if you can't generalize the findings to every situation.
Exactly. And even if you can't generalize in the traditional sense, case studies can still offer valuable insights that can inform practice or policy decisions. They can help us understand the complexities of real-world situations and identify potential solutions that might not be apparent from other research methods.
I'm starting to see case studies in a whole new light. They're not just these interesting anecdotes. They're powerful tools for research, learning, and even personal growth.
Exactly. They can challenge our assumptions, broaden our perspectives, and help us see the world in a more nuanced and compassionate way. Because ultimately, case studies are about people. They're about real individuals grappling with real challenges, making decisions, and experiencing the consequences.
That's what makes them so compelling, right? They connect us to human experiences and remind us that behind every statistic, every trend, there are individuals with their own unique stories.
And that's why they're such a powerful tool for learning and understanding. They make us think, they make us feel, and they make us question the world around us. So let's delve a little deeper into the world of case studies and see what other treasures we can uncover.
You know, as we're talking about these individual stories and the depth we can get from case studies,
Yeah.
it makes me think back to those steps involved in actually conducting one.
Yeah.
You mentioned gathering evidence.
Right.
And I'm curious, what kinds of sources do researchers tap into?
Hmm.
Is it all interviews and observations, or is there more to it?
It's definitely more than just talking to people, though interviews are incredibly valuable.
I bet.
Case study researchers are like detectives,
Oh, I like that.
piecing together a puzzle,
Yeah.
using everything at their disposal to get a truly comprehensive view.
So what else besides interviews?
Well, they might analyze documents,
Okay, documents, yeah.
pore over archival records,
Wow, going deep.
even examine physical artifacts, depending on the case.
So it's about going beyond the surface
Absolutely.
and digging into all sorts of information, kind of like a forensic investigation, right?
Precisely.
Very cool.
It's about corroborating information from different sources to build a strong and well-supporting case. And what's really important to note is the meticulousness of case study researchers.
Meticulousness, what do you mean?
They document their processes thoroughly, look for patterns and themes in the data, and constantly question their own interpretations to avoid bias.
That's so important. Speaking of different interpretations, it makes me think about all the case studies we see in the news or documentaries.
Yes.
Are those the same kind of rigorous case studies that researchers conduct?
That's a great question, and it highlights the importance of distinguishing between different types of case studies.
Okay, different types.
The ones you see in popular media.
Yeah, the ones that are like really dramatic.
They're often meant to be illustrative or entertaining,
Right.
capturing your attention with a compelling narrative.
It's all about the story.
Exactly. They might not have the same level of rigor and depth as a scholarly case study, though.
Like one published in an academic journal.
Precisely.
So it's like the difference between a fictionalized crime drama on TV
Yeah.
and a real-life forensic investigation.
Perfect analogy.
Both might be based on a case, but their goals and standards are different.
Exactly. And it underscores the importance of being critical consumers of information.
That's so true, especially these days.
When you come across a case study, whether it's in a book, a news report, or even a podcast like ours.
Wait, are you saying our listeners shouldn't trust us?
No, not at all. I just mean it's always good to ask yourself some key questions.
Like what?
What are the sources of information? How was the data collected and analyzed? Are there any potential biases?
It sounds like we need to apply the same critical thinking skills to case studies that we would to any other information we encounter.
Absolutely.
You can't just take them at face value, right?
No, we need to dig a little deeper.
Look for those hidden layers.
Exactly. That critical thinking is essential in a world overflowing with information. It's about evaluating the quality of evidence, considering different perspectives,
Yeah.
and forming our own informed conclusions.
This makes me realize that case studies can actually be a fantastic tool for developing critical thinking skills.
Oh, absolutely.
It's not just about passively absorbing information.
Right.
It's about actively analyzing it, questioning it, making connections.
You got it. And that's one of the reasons case studies are so widely used in education. They provide this rich, real-world context that forces students to think for themselves, to grapple with complex situations, and to develop those all-important problem-solving muscles.
This has been so insightful. We've covered a lot of ground. What case studies are, their different types, how to conduct them, and even how to be savvy consumers of them.
It's quite a journey.
But I'm wondering, are there any limitations to using case studies?
Limitations.
Are there situations where they might not be the best approach?
That's a really thoughtful question. Like any research method, case studies have their strengths and limitations.
Okay, strengths and limitations.
One of the main challenges is generalizability, as you alluded to earlier.
Right. Just because something happens in one case doesn't mean it applies to everyone.
Exactly, because you're often focusing on a single case or a small number of cases.
Uh-huh.
It can be difficult to say with certainty that your findings apply broadly to a larger population.
Right. It goes back to that one swallow doesn't make a summer idea. Just because we observe something in one case doesn't mean it's a universal truth.
Exactly. And that's why researchers are cautious about overgeneralizing from case study findings.
Makes sense.
However, it's important to remember that generalizability isn't always the primary goal.
Okay. It's not always the goal.
Sometimes the aim is to gain that in-depth understanding of a particular situation, or to generate hypotheses that can be tested in future research using other methods.
So it circles back to the purpose of the research and the questions we're trying to answer.
Precisely.
If we're seeking deep understanding of a specific phenomenon, a case study can be incredibly valuable, even if it doesn't give us universal truths.
Exactly. And even if you can't generalize in the traditional sense, case studies can still offer valuable insights that can inform practice or policy decisions. They can help us grasp the nuances of real-world situations, those messy details we talked about, and identify potential solutions that might not be apparent from other research methods.
It all comes back to that human element of case studies, doesn't it? They're not just about abstract concepts and data points. They're about real people, real stories, and real struggles.
And that's what makes them so powerful and so engaging. They connect us to human experiences, foster empathy and understanding, and remind us that behind every statistic, every trend, there are individuals with their own unique journeys.
It strikes me that we often talk about data and trends in such an abstract way.
Yeah, it's easy to get lost in the numbers.
But case studies really bring it back down to earth, you know?
They do, they do.
They remind us that data represents real people.
Real lives.
Real lives, exactly.
That's such a key takeaway. And it's what makes case studies so compelling.
I agree.
They bridge the gap between the head and the heart. They engage our intellect, while also appealing to our empathy.
This whole deep dive has been so eye-opening. I feel like I've leveled up my understanding of case studies.
I'm glad to hear that.
I used to think they were just, interesting stories, but now I see them as this incredible tool for research, learning, even personal growth.
It's true. They can be so powerful. And what's even more exciting is that case study research is a constantly evolving field. There are always new ways to apply this method, new technologies to enhance it, new insights to be gleaned from the world around us.
So it's not just about looking back at past cases.
No, not at all.
It's about using those cases to help us understand the present.
And shape the future.
And shape the future, yeah. To solve new problems and understand ourselves better.
Exactly. And that brings us back to you, our listener.
Yes, our amazing listeners.
We've explored the world of case studies together. But now it's your turn to take the plunge.
Ooh, I love that. Take the plunge.
What surprising or thought-provoking case studies have you encountered?
Yeah, what really stood out to you?
Where do you see the potential for using this method to gain a deeper understanding of the world around you?
Maybe you've come across a case study that completely shifted your perspective.
Or challenged a long-held belief?
Or perhaps you've even considered conducting your own case study.
To explore a question that's been nagging at you?
Whatever it may be, we encourage you to embrace the power of case studies.
Yes. Keep diving deep.
And keep diving deep into the complexities of human experience. Thanks for joining us on this fascinating journey. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep learning.
Thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. Your support helps us keep creating valuable content like this.